Welcome to CH-AI Brews, your go-to podcast for all things AI at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. I'm your host, Daniel Duggin, with a bachelor's in computer science pursuing a master's in computer science. In each episode, we'll talk about the ways AI is revolutionizing education. We'll explore how AI is transforming teaching, learning, and our community. Whether you're a student, an educator, or simply curious about the future of learning, this podcast is for you.
Yeah, I'm Charles Wood. I'm the president and CEO for the Chattanooga Area Chamber of Commerce. And just a little bit about me, I've been in Chattanooga for 12 years. I spent the first 10 at the Chamber doing economic development. And so really what that meant was being very focused on new job creation in Chattanooga and then really in the 16-county tri-state region. And then about 2 years ago, ended up as the CEO for the organization. And so it's a little bit broader role, but still heavily focused on kind of economic development, economic growth in Southeast Tennessee and the region.
Is AI something that you're asked about by business and industry partners that are seeking a presence in Chattanooga?
Sure. So there's a lot of conversation around artificial intelligence and kind of what's happening, not just in Chattanooga, but what the bigger trends and the potential impacts are. We have a lot of businesses that are kind of in conversations around how do we start to leverage this. And I think the world woke up when generative AI with ChatGPT kind of became, I think, really well known. All of a sudden, we went from robots on TV to what does AI look like in terms of my daily life. And so I think there's opportunities, there's risks, there's certainly concerns out there. But the reality is kind of cat's out of the bag, right? So AI is now part of our daily lives, whether people realize it or not. And for us, it's kind of a big focus of this is really around where we think there's opportunity for innovation in Chattanooga and really the potential for technology growth that happens here. So that's one. And then the second piece is really around, we have a pretty significant industry base, right, of manufacturing that's here in the market. And if you go into companies that were around for a long time in Chattanooga, it looks like what you would think manufacturing looks like. It might be dirty. It might be kind of closed in. But if you go into a lot of our manufacturers today, it's not odd to walk in and it look like a clean room, right? Where there's lots of robotics that are in place and working on building whatever they're building. But it's only been recently where I've walked into a manufacturing plant and I've literally seen a robot running across the manufacturing floor carrying materials. And so you saw them on manufacturing lines, and so you've got to program them, and effectively that starts to become AI. But I think there's two big opportunities for us, and one is really around what happens in our manufacturing space, and the other is really around what happens in our startup scene.
Awesome. And from a business perspective, are there any specific AI-related skills or technologies that you're encouraging employees to use and that you use yourself?
We leverage Microsoft as kind of our base for technology in our organization. And so we have we basically adopted their Copilot system for everything that kind of lives inside the Microsoft Office suite, right? So if you think about emails and what you're typing up in Word documents and things like that. And so for us, that's the start as an organization of how we use that. And so it is around, generating content. It is around kind of building out scheduling opportunities and things like that. And I think that the other piece that we'll start to dive into is really trying to find some opportunities to educate our members. And so the chamber has almost 2,000 members, or we're approaching 1,900 members at this point. And I think no matter what you do, whether you sell coffee or you make cars, whether you're writing code or you're in a restaurant, this is a question around how do we leverage this technology for our business? How do we make it us more efficient? How do we make us better from a customer service standpoint? And so I think we're going to be looking for opportunities to really create some knowledge, get some knowledge out there for our members, for our small businesses in the community and our bigger companies in the community to understand how to leverage it.
Right. And one thing I'm sure you noticed even now is that some people are a little hesitant towards AI use and what its capabilities are in the future for it. So in your dealings with peers from around the country, have you seen some of that fear with AI use?
That's a great question. And I think, it's so my peers, if you think about people who are running chambers of commerce, economic development organizations across the country, I think we're like a lot of people. We're both excited by the potential and then scared of what it could mean for jobs in the future. And so I think that a lot of those things are going to take time to play out. And, I've read a couple articles pretty recently. So one, he's an NYU professor. His name is Yann LeCun. He's French. And his view right now is basically AI is very much in its infancy. And, that when people talk about concerns of it's going to take my job over and it's going to be, smarter than the smartest human ever, his view is, well, it's not even as smart as a house cat right now. So there's still a long way to go. And the likelihood is it's going to take a really long time for some of the extreme views of what can happen, take place. In economic development, we always tend to look back at what technology has done. And certainly, if you think about agriculture, there was a time where my ancestors would have been working in a field. They would have been planting things. They would have been harvesting things. And you need hundreds and thousands of people to do it. And today, you can have one guy in a tractor that's GPS monitored and controlled, through technology, farming 1,000 acres in Montana. And so that created this massive employment shift in the world. And so, but people found places, right? People found opportunity. New technology created new opportunities. And so I have to think, and I'm in the optimism business, I have to think that same thing will happen, that more jobs will be created. There'll be jobs that start to fade, but more jobs will be created. But as I talk to economic developers across the country, that's their concern, is what happens kind of to our current employers. How does that impact the folks who are working there today? And I think that's going to be a shift. And the one thing that has made humanity really be able to thrive in what has not always been great environments is our ability to adapt. And I think that's a message to the students that are at UTC. That's a message to people who live in our community and our community leaders is Chattanooga has to adapt. People have to adapt. And I think as this technology kind of unfolds, it's going to be really around whether we choose to embrace it and how we choose to embrace it, and whether or not we're willing to really invest in making sure that it becomes an asset.
You mentioned the fear of, or people having fear of losing their job, and you being on the optimism side. So how have you taken those two areas and reassured maybe yourself or other employees or maybe students that you've come across that AI isn't here to replace you, it's here to enhance you? At least that's my personal belief. And what has been the response to that, and what was the response within the chamber initially when it came out?
Yeah, so the response in the chamber has been, this is a tool. This is going to allow us to do so much more with the same, staff size we have. So that's the first thing. Like, it should be viewed in a way like this is going to make your job easier. It's going to make you better. I think from that perspective, it's been pretty well embraced from our team internally. I think that as we talk to folks out in the community, it's important that we position Chattanooga, and I wake up every day thinking about kind of what is the economic picture for Chattanooga, that we're positioning Chattanooga to be able to leverage those new technologies and kind of new opportunities. And then, frankly, that's one of the opportunities for UTC, and making sure that UTC has the resources to build out, right, a great talent pipeline that understands the technology, can utilize the technology, and maybe can build the technology. I view it as certainly it's a necessary skill at this point. I think that if you're like, if I'm talking to the students out there now, like if you are a student and you haven't really started to use it and think about using it and figuring out what questions to ask and how you really can make generative AI work for you, you need to spend a lot of time on it. And I think that whatever you're going to do when you walk out into the workforce, whether that's, in a business career, that's in a technology career, that's, in a liberal arts career, leveraging this tool is really important, and you having that skill set is going to make you much more marketable in the workforce. So 100%. And so if you think about our computer science students that are here, it's now generating code, to your point, right? And you have to figure out and know how to help make it do that. But that's an incredibly powerful tool. I think in the same way, if you're in business and you're building a business case for an acquisition for a company, or you're looking at launching a new product, things like that, that this is a tool that can help you do that. And so embracing it, understanding it is pretty critical. I'll give a shout out to one of our team members, Ross Katayama. He leads our councils. So we have a number of kind of geographic area councils, and right now there's 12. We're kind of narrowing it down and consolidating a few. But he goes to each one of them has a board meeting. He goes to every one of their board meetings, and they have president and treasurer and all that kind of stuff. He has a cool little speaker with cameras on it. He records the meetings. He then takes that and uses that as a tool through ChatGPT and Zoom right now. He hasn't fully adopted the Microsoft stuff yet, but and basically not only does it create minutes, it creates follow-ups for the different people that are there on what the things are that it needs to do. It summarizes it and can send it to other people on our team or that are on their board or engaged in that council, so they get a quick summary of kind of what happened in the meeting, but they don't have to read minutes in kind of a traditional sense. So it's a very powerful tool for him. It's allowed him to be much more efficient in managing really what are more than 100 volunteers that he works with in any given month. And so I think knowing that and bringing that technology into the workplace is tremendous. And so Ross it's just for him, he's embraced that technology and really leveraged it to make his job easier. But also I think for our volunteers and the folks that are engaged in those councils, to make them feel a lot more in tune with what's happening, and probably view the chamber as an entity that is embracing technology in a way that maybe many of them are not yet.
All right, and so my last question is, looking ahead, we've talked about how Chattanooga is a tech-forward city. So what is your vision for Chattanooga going forward, whether that's in the chamber or just the city as a whole? And how central do you believe AI will be to that identity of being a tech-forward city?
I think we want to be a place where people want to create things, and we want to be a place where people build things. And one way to do that is certainly leaning into tech. And so the chamber runs a small business incubator on the North Shore. We have 30 to 50 companies in there at any one time. Quite a few UTC alums that are engaged there. And so we've got some incredible companies that are doing some really cool stuff. So one that'll graduate out is a robotics company called One Off Robotics. They build out customized robotic systems for national labs, big research universities, and doing some work with governmental entities. And so their founders have software backgrounds. The technology that goes into those are pretty incredible. And so when I think about kind of what does the future look like for Chattanooga, in part it's leveraging kind of some of the manufacturing legacy we have, because that we're good at making things, right? But I think it's also leaning pretty heavily into this idea around being creative and kind of new ideas and embracing those and building on those. And that needs to be our future. And so I tell this story of Chattanooga's history, and it's partly myth and partly rumor, that there were two guys that woke up every day. They lived kind of in a boarding house in downtown. They woke up every day and they said, how are we going to make $1 million? And they worked really hard to convince the founder of Coca-Cola that he should put Coca-Cola in bottles and he should let them do it. And so they made a lot more than $1 million when they convinced them to do it. It's part of Chattanooga's legacy. And so I think like that spirit of entrepreneurship is critical. I hope that it is, there's the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship on campus here that's kind of tied in with the business school. So there's some connectivity there. There's a veterans program UTC is engaged with pretty heavily. And so to me, it's really about the city embracing kind of the roots of entrepreneurship. From a technology standpoint, tech forward is important for us. That's where real growth, I think, can happen, and that real growth creates opportunity.
This has been Charles Wood, and I'm Daniel Duggin. Thanks for tuning in. The music in this podcast is by Blue Dot Sessions. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. You can find this and all episodes of CH-AI Brews at wutc.org/podlab or wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, keep learning and exploring the possibilities of AI.